him are Marshall Pugh of the Daily Mail, Benny McCall of the Daily Express, John Connell of the Evening News, and John Freeman, assistant editor of the newspaper.
Your Highness, could I start by taking you back to what I think must have been the most momentous moment of your life, which was on the 12th of July last year, when you were first told that you'd inherited your grandfather's position. Now, what thoughts, truthfully, went through your mind at that moment?
Well, it's rather hard to go through them all. I think the first one was the enormous responsibility which had come to me. I didn't feel prepared for it. It was a very, very heavy burden to take over from a man of such status as my grandfather.
Had you in fact known before that evening that you were going to carry this burden?
No, I didn't. No, I had no idea.
I wonder, do you know now, whether, how long your grandfather had you in mind rather than anybody else in your family?
I don't know. He had sent all the members of the family out to the Middle East. He had sent out Sabri, he had sent out my brother and myself. My father had been out there a lot. And so I didn't have any more idea than anyone else.
But you transferred from civil engineering to studying Middle Eastern history, didn't you? That was earlier, wasn't it? That was earlier than that.
That was earlier than I was nominated.
Well, didn't that give you some inkling that what was in your grandfather's mind?
No, because I chose the subject myself.
Oh, you did?
Why? Because it was a subject of interest to me and because I'd taken Islamic history at school before going to England.
Most people, I think, thought that the Ali Khan would inherit the position. Have you been aware at all of any hurt feeling or feeling of disappointment?
I don't think so. I don't think my father would ever have those sort of feelings towards me. I have never had the least impression of that.
Looking back on it all now, are you left with the feeling that your grandfather or your grandfather and your father together were sort of preparing you with special training all your life?
No, I don't think so. To be quite frank, I don't think so at all. I think that my father very much wanted me to see the community and see the way the community was run, and so did my grandfather.
But you have had all your life a pretty strict training in Islamic thought and religion.
Yes, I have, very much.
Could you detail your regime at all? Could you tell us how it happened?
Well, it began in East Africa with a private tutor in Islamic history and in the principles of Islam. And then at school we had, that's my brother and myself had a tutor also.
A religious tutor?
A religious tutor and a tutor in history. And then when I went to Harvard I took Oriental courses in Turkey.
Do you speak Persian yourself?
No, I don't.
Well, now, you're being educated at Harvard, which of course is a top-ranking American university. Did you have any say in the choice of this particular education? I mean, was there any possibility of your having gone to Oxford, where you consulted at all?
No, my grandfather was very insistent that I should go to an American university.
Did he say why?
Yes, he did. He wanted me to see what he considered the modern world. And he wanted me to have as modern an education as he thought was possible. And I had first applied to MIT, and then I finally went to Harvard.
So the thing about this is that your grandfather was always often said that he also created between East and West. Now, in his time, that meant creating a bridge roughly between Britain and the Middle East. Do you think the fact he went to Harvard means that the bridge is changed, it's now between the Middle East and America?
I don't think so. It's very hard for me to discuss the reasons that my grandfather sent me to Harvard. But I think it was more that he wanted me to see the modern economic structure of the country and the pace of life. I think those were the things I'm really interested in, the scientific discoveries particularly.
Do you like the pace of life?
Yes, I find it fascinating.
Could you tell us now, in really quite simple language, exactly what your position is? Because I think all of us have a romantic idea of the spiritual order of the great community. That is it, for instance, proper to compare you with a pope?
No.
Well, then with what?
Well, because an imam, the imam holds a religious position, but he also guides the inquiries when they ask for his guidance in secular matters, in business matters, health matters, even sometimes political matters.
But supposing, for instance, one of your followers in a political trouble spot, and let us say Kenya, which is not after all impossible, were to write and ask you for political advice about how the community should behave there, would you feel in a position to give it?
I wouldn't feel in a position to give it, no. It would be the political committee, which is organized to give advice on those particular points that would give the answer. If it's a particular sticky problem, then they would probably refer it to me.
But then the personal, individual problems of groups or people themselves, did you take up, as soon as possible after your grandfather's death, this endless task, as I remember he described it, of constant advice and help to the community?
Oh, definitely.
Do you do that every day now?
Yeah.
How many letters do you get a day? I mean, it's not an average, I mean, roughly.
It's hard to tell. The reports are really the long things that one has to read. The reports from the various institutions.
Yes. But do you get personal letters all the time from your community?
Oh, yes.
And dozens a day or even more?
It's hard to tell. It's always, if I'm traveling, then one gets an enormous number of them. Because then they're in direct contact.
When you're traveling, do you ever feel very young and inadequate? You feel a great crowd in some center?
Well, it's hard to say because after all, one has direct contact. So I mean, after all, it's not as if it was a lot of people whom I didn't know, who I had no contact with at all.
So you must have been in great crowds for the first time, for example, in Pakistan or in...
It wasn't the first time.
No?
I had travelled before it in those countries.
Now, this succession came, you told us, about fell from the blue, a tremendous thing which you hadn't expected. Have there been any moments since you succeeded when you have wished that perhaps this great responsibility hadn't fallen on you?
No, frankly, no.
You've accepted it and recognized it.
Could you, if you wanted to, hand it over to anybody else?
No.
You could.
No, that's...
Have you designated your own successor? I'm not asking you who, but have you in fact written a document anywhere naming your successor?
Well, I thought of that problem, yes.
But have you done it?
Yes, I have.
You have, because obviously an accident could happen.
Well, that is, of course, a very important factor in my own life.
Yes. So when your grandfather said that he once did, that this was a job which couldn't be done until the deathbed of the reigning imam, you really wouldn't agree with this, with modern air travel and so on. You'd have to ensure a bit more than that.
Well, you would have to ensure that the successor was designated.
Yes. So somebody in the world does know who your successor would be.
Yes.
Well, that
That would be myself.
Yes.
You only yourself. You reached that decision entirely alone, in other words.
Entirely the
And you've told nobody else at all?
I have to absolutely know.
Yes. But we've been talking a good deal about your travelling. Could you perhaps let us know where, geographically, about the world, the community is now dispersed? Because you are a pretty dispersed community.
I couldn't go through it in detail. The large communities are in East Africa, Pakistan, India, Persia, Afghanistan, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Malaya, Burma, Belgian Congo, Mozambique, South Africa, Madagascar. It's a very, very dispersed community.
And how many are they altogether?
I don't know myself.
I think there's a lot of misconception, perhaps, about this business of the Aga Khan being weighed against precious stones.
Yeah.
And so, am I not right in thinking that this, in fact, is for charity?
That's correct. Yeah, it's entirely a symbolical ceremony. And the funds were used by my grandfather either to build an investment company or a lending company or something like that.
Now, could I ask a rather important question here? Because reading the circumstances of your grandfather's death, it seems that his fortune was not left to you. It was left partly to your stepgrandmother and partly to your father in a customary way. Now, does this mean that you are not able to control the funds of the imamate yourself?
No, because my grandfather left, according to the Shia law, his secular property to the heirs, but the imamate property stays with the actual position of imam.
So that you're not obliged to ask either your father or your step-grandmother before you can take financial steps in the imamate?
No, because the imamate property is something which the imam controls.
And you control that yourself?
Yes, the imam controls it himself.
It's very difficult to assess the actual value of all that property, isn't it?
Practically impossible.
Apart from the sort of wild dreams that have been made about it, are there any sort of ways it could reach any?
No, because the properties are changing the whole time. The schools are being built and sold, hospitals are being built and sold. The community is moving the whole time.
Well, let's put it this way. Your grandfather was often called one of the richest men in the world. Was that true?
I don't think so.
Is it true of you?
No.
That's as close as you can come on that one.
That's as I can come.
Tell us how this money is collected. I mean, is it a system of taxation or is it really entirely voluntary?
No, it's entirely voluntary. And the imam uses the money either to grant scholarships to students, to grant capital to a school or a hospital. We've got one hospital in Nairobi at the moment, which will have cost about £400,000. And my grandfather gave a very large sum to that hospital.
Is that confined to your community, or is it open to all?
No, that's open to all the community.
Could you tell me, your grandfather and his grandfather before him, by the accident of history, settled, or your great-great-grandfather settled in India. And is it in your mind, as I think without presumption, I may suggest it was in your grandfather's, that the body of your community is moving elsewhere? Is it going to East Africa?
I don't know. I don't know what my grandfather's ideas were on that subject. That was not something he'd spoken to me about. I don't think very many of the Ismailis are moving from India to East Africa at the moment. That was a process which happened some time ago.
But you yourself have been crowned in East Africa, and I mean you have great interests, both secular and sacred there.
Yes, definitely.
I'm interested in the question of men. Here you have this fantastic responsibility, and there is a great deal of money knocking about, whether you are the richest man in the world or not. Now, who actually looks after all this? I mean, you are taking a university course, a demanding one. How much time a day do you pay, attention do you give to these affairs?
Well, it's a lot of time, and above all, one has to sort out the problems which are really important and which take a lot of, how should I say, advice. In general, oh yes, definitely. I take advice from wherever I can get it.
But have you got a regular sort of appointment of advisors who belong to the Imamate?
Are you a staff, in fact?
Yes, I have a staff.
But you are on your own.
But I'm
yours is the responsibility.
Completely.
Yes. You were talking about the important things in your daily life. Now, I think there is something that is not quite so important. I'm wondering, do you ever get bored when you go around schools and hospitals, one after the other, thousands at a time?
No, not at all. Not at all, because the curriculum of the school changes in every country. And it's very interesting to see the way the children of the various countries react to the different curriculums which they have. And one is always having to bring up the education to modern standards, otherwise the children get very bored with their schooling.
I hope you won't misunderstand the question if I ask whether this job really can be done without a wife.
I'm not married, so I can't tell you.
No, but would you not feel the need of a wife? Because, in all seriousness, there are surely a great many social jobs which come easily to a woman, and your grandfather certainly defended things.
Well, there are certainly some social jobs which I'm not very happy doing.
Kissing babies.
Do you rely much on the advice of your grandfather's widow?
Yes, I do, on the major issue. She has always given me very good advice.
Now, is it true that your grandfather did suggest in his will that you should turn to her for advice?
Yes,
Well, I wanted to ask you, am I right in thinking, first of all, on the whole, in the Muslim world, women are not usually encouraged to take leading position in affairs, and does this indicate any significant change of view on your grandfather's part?
No, I don't think so. I really don't think that in the least, but I think that my grandfather considered her a person who knew the community very well indeed. And therefore, any important problems, her advice is obviously very worthy. So is my father's. He has travelled a great deal in those countries.
If I was put on this question of wives, you're married about 3 times a week. Do you feel that you're fairly reported in these matters?
Excuse me?
You're fairly reported on your social life and so on, your night clubbing and things? You don't think you are?
I think that one can't lump the press together. It's rather unfair. I think some papers give one a beating and others don't.
But you have got used to living in a pretty constant care of public.
Yes, no, yes.
You take it as it comes.
Well, there's not much one can do about it.
If you had a free choice now where you would settle and live, which country would you choose?
That's a very difficult question to answer because for the moment I've been traveling.
Yes,
for the last 6.5 months. I will still be traveling. And the big decision now is whether I go back to Harvard. So that question doesn't really arise in the near future.
Is it at all practical for you to go back and resume your studies at Harvard with this tremendous new responsibility you've got?
I think so. I think that Harvard would give me very good preparation in the various fields which are important.
You would then have to do something to appoint a regular staff to advise you in political matters, presumably.
No, because you have councils, you see, who guide the community on the issue. And people who are either in government service at the time, people who know the whole frame of the political setup.
And you keep in touch with them yourself directly?
Oh, yes, you have regular reports from them.
I don't understand why you're at Harvard at all, really. I mean, you're studying Middle Eastern history and so on there. Now, isn't that rather like the King of England studying English history in Bangkok?
I don't think so. Harvard has got a very, very fine set of Oriental scholars. Very fine set.
In other words, you mean the best in the world, perhaps?
That I wouldn't say. I don't know what the other universities have, but I know that Harvard has got a very fine set of them. But they're in fact Christian, aren't they? Most of them are Christian. Some of the visiting professors are Muslim.
Isn't that bound to slant their view of Middle Eastern history, especially early history?
It might do. It might do.
And who corrects that, yourself?
Well, it's very hard if you're under the influence of a professor to know whether his view is strongly slanted or not unless you come in contact with some other professor whose view is along another line.
Well, one of the most fascinating things about your grandfather was that while he was this great religious leader, he also, in the public eye in the Western world, was a man who had a great many pleasures and took them with splendid ease.
Yes.
Are you going to carry on that tradition at all?
I don't know whether that I haven't been out of town long enough to tell. It's only since July, and that's somewhat some 8 months.
Yes, he was a great figure of the racetracks, wasn't he? A colour,
Yes,
what
yes,
we call
right.
sport.
Yes.
Now, did he never show any disappointment that you signally, I think I'm right in saying I'm not interested in racing and horses?
Well, no, that he never did, because he was very, very wide-minded about that. If one had other interests than his own, they were really his interests when you spoke to him.
You were, I think.
Yes, I did right.
Hmm.
And he would always ask you, the first question he would ask was how your particular sport was coming along, not whether you were doing his sport.
I hope you appreciate the rowing world could do with a patron if you want to race.
Yes, if you would get 4 winners, like this famous 4 Derby winners.
And you also have all sorts of other private things. For example, you play a mouth organ, is that right?
Well, I tried it. I can't say I played it.
But you're really rather keen, aren't you?
Well, I enjoy it, yes. I'm a great admirer of Larry Abbott.
Are you interested in music generally?
Yes, I am.
What particular taste?
Oh.
Are you a cat or not?
No.
Square, are you?
No, neither.
Do you like classical music on the
Very much.
Yes.
How do you feel about the whole business of night clubbing and the cha-cha-cha and the mambo and so on? I mean, how do you stand in all that stuff?
Well, I don't stand in it at all. Why should I stand in it?
But you do occasionally go, don't you?
Yes, I occasionally go with friends of mine. If it's a party and after a theatre or something, I want to go to a nightclub.
But you don't particularly like it?
Not particularly. I mean, I certainly wouldn't spend every night of my life in a nightclub.
Are you interested in the theatre and ballet?
Very much indeed. My grandfather always took us to the ballet. A great deal.
He loved the ballet.
He loved the ballet.
I remember him in Venice at the ballet there, the American ballet. He adored it.
Absolutely adored it.
Have you had much chance to get to the New York theatre while you've been at Harvard?
Very good.
And in London, have you been now on this visit?
Not on this visit. I haven't been here long enough.
No.
I've only been here 2 or 3 days each time.
Yes, I see.
Do you find that, as a consequence of the fantastic and fabulous position you hold, that there are these rather tiresome consequences such as fan mail, mash notes from young women?
Not very many, no.
No?
No.
Do you ever find people ask you cheeky questions about religion and so on in the course of the day, sort of asking you rather embarrassing questions about Muhammad and so on?
Well, they're not cheeky questions. They're usually questions of people who are interested. One couldn't qualify them as cheeky questions.
You don't ever have anyone sort of buttonholing you and try to convert you to the record bike or something?
Well, sometimes they do, but then a general answer is usually quite sufficient.
There is one question I'd like to ask you on this. It's a difficult one. You see, I think the Muslim religion encourages people to enjoy life to the utmost, and this your grandfather certainly did, and indeed your father does too. Now, have you ever found it an embarrassment to you in the months you've been doing your present job, this reputation for good living that both your grandfather and your father enjoyed, but which in a way I think you don't share?
I don't think so. Because the community in general treat you as a single person. They don't attach any of the ideas which your family have had to yourself, and they always treat you as their imam.
But this is fascinating. That you are already a total individual yourself in their mind.
Well, one is in fact the imam, which is the center of the organization.
Yes.
Well, putting it the other way around, the fact that you do not frequent racetracks, will that be down to your credit with your followers, or?
That I don't know. I never asked them. I don't know at all.
Have you a feeling in the tour that you've made so far that you are comparatively little known among your followers? I mean, did your appointment, in other words, occasion surprise in your own community?
I don't know that. It would be hard for me to find out. But I really couldn't answer that question because I'm not qualified to answer it. I don't know. Are we right in thinking that one community did declare that your father was the imam? Quite well. That was it was more a question of timing. They declared that before the actual nomination had been made.
It was just a pure mistake.
There was a delay between my grandfather's death and my nomination, and it was in that particular period that they nominated my father.
You've been to Pakistan?
Yes, I have.
Have you been to India, yes?
Yes, I have also been to India.
Because do you still own, does your family still own, and you own a lot of property in Bombay?
Not a lot of property. We own one family house, which has been a traditional family house since my family went to India, yes. Malabar Hill.
Yes. Are you going to keep that on?
I think so. It certainly will stay in the family. I don't know whether it'll be my house. It might be my father's.
Yes. But you are intending to keep it on?
Yes, oh yes.
And you've done India, Pakistan, East Africa, and you're now going to Congo.
Belgium, Congo, Mozambique, South Africa, and Madagascar.
How do you stand up to that sort of travel?
It's tiring, but the interest is quite sufficient to keep you going.
You've got a heroic appetite, my son.
So when Harvard is over, your life will be one of almost constant travel.
I don't know. If I go back to Harvard, it will give me a little bit more time to sort of plan my life. For the moment, it's been difficult because of the traveling I've had.
One of the things your grandfather did most successfully, as John Connell said a minute or two ago, was to construct some sort of bridge between East and West. Now, he was clearly Asian in many of his ways, although he's British citizen and knew this country well. But looking at you and talking to you now, I can't help feeling that you're almost entirely Western. Now, I wonder if you're in a position, therefore, to go on with this work, or whether it may not be necessary for you to move yourself to Asia to do it so successfully.
No, I think that's an incorrect view, because an Asian, or a person of Asian origin, and a Muslim can very well be educated in the West, and can lead a normal life in the West. And yet he remains just as Muslim and just as Asian fundamentally as if he had been educated there.
Yes, sir. Yourself, do you find your deep affinities with the Islamic peoples rather than...
Very definite. Very definite.
But wasn't there a suggestion at some time that you would eventually settle in the Middle East?
No, that was a question of my going to university.
And you may still do that, might you?
Well, I had intended to before I became Aga Khan, yes. I didn't intend to go to American University in Beirut. Yes.
But from the way your grandfather settled in the south of France, do you have any place in mind where you will make your centre?
No, I think he settled there mainly because at the end of his life he wasn't able to travel a great deal. He was a sick man and couldn't support those sort of journeys.
You'll go on living out of a suitcase for years and years, will you?
Well, certainly until I decide whether to go back to Harvard, yes.
How many languages, in fact, do you speak altogether?
Two, I think, relatively fluently, English and French. And a splattering of Urdu, a splattering of Spanish, and a little bit of Italian.
Yes, I see. But you don't speak a wide variety of Asian or African?
No, I don't. Urdu is the only one which...
Yes.
You have a younger brother than yourself?
Yes, I do.
Is he going to take any of the burden off your shoulders or not?
I don't think so. I think, you see, the role doesn't have anything to do with my brother. He would probably form his own life when he finishes Harvard.
Does the fact that you've been to Harvard mean that you have ideas of modernizing your
The secular institutions, yes. Definitely.
You have definite views on...
Well, on banking systems, on those sort of things, if one has a chance to study them, and one finds that they work better, well, they certainly, that was what my grandfather did, was to put them into a working basis in the community.
Yes. And I can think you've also made adjustments in the method of prayer to go in with
No,
that's
not
quite untrue, is it?
That was quite untrue. The comment I made there was that very young children of the age of 2 or 3, were not to stay up late at night for the last prayer, or sick people. That was the only comment which I made.
But just talking a little bit about modernization, how much do you think a community like the Ismaili community can take modernization? Will it not crack apart completely if we give it too many shocks?
No, I don't think so. I think they are very sensitive people and quite capable to live a modern life and yet keep the faith which characterizes it. And that was certainly one of the great achievements of my grandfather.
Well, now, the studio clock tells me that we've come to the time when I've got to put the last question to you, and I've been thinking, as you've been talking, of a remark that your grandfather made when he appeared in this program 4 years ago. And he said that he wasn't a painter and he wasn't a sculptor, and so the idea of creation came to him in the breeding of horses or in the breeding of flowers. Now, what gives you this personal sense of creative satisfaction in life?
Well, that's very hard to say. I think it's the sense of being able to mold people, to mold their lives, to help them in the various ways that one can, whether it be secular ways or even religious ways. I think some of the Middle Eastern communities have a big problem. They have their religion and they have a modern way of life which they're trying to pick up, and to me that is a big problem for them to solve.
His Highness the Aga Khan was questioned by John Freeman, assistant editor of the New Statesman, John Connell of the Evening News, Berlin Charles of the Daily Express, and Marshall Pugh of the Daily Mail. Press conference was presented by Hugh Burnham.